This one is another digital one, so we're just going to write down the name. Grandia. I played this game a couple months ago, despite it coming out in, I believe, the 90s. This is a PlayStation 1 experience that any JRPG fan should and must play. Grandia was something that I slept on for many years. I kept seeing it in both the PlayStation Store on the PSN. I kept seeing a hard copy back when it was kind of cheap years and years ago in the used media stores. And I would go like, maybe, but I would always end up getting something else instead. Right now, is the perfect time to play Grandia 1. There's two ways that I could think of that you could play this game for a bargain. On the PlayStation 1 version, the original version, no alterations, so as to say, can be found on the PlayStation 3 store, the PSN network, for, I believe, it was $5.99, maybe $6.99, but it's under $10. You can play it, it's got 2 discs, and it is a very quaint experience. It is very much on rails. You will not really go off the beaten path too many times. You'll have a few side quests here and there, but ultimately this is an on-rails story experience. Once you go through an area, you're probably not going to be going back to it. The other way you could play this game is on the Steam computer, the Steam PC. You can go onto there, and I believe they HD remastered the first one alongside the second one. So if you wish to play those two there, you can go ahead and do it there. For me, I liked the PlayStation 1 experience far more. Mainly because it's retro feel to it. This is the original experience of Grandia that I wanted to experience, not necessarily the remastered experience, though the remastered experience is very pretty. I just prefer to play on consoles versus PC. That's just me. I don't care what you prefer to do, so long as you find a way to play this game. It is worth it, because it does something that not too many JRPGs do, that from all of the RPGs I've experienced, end up doing. Most of the time, you have a party system, you have your main hero, you got the heroine, and you've got some other backup guys. And normally you can go to towns, talk to all the NPCs, and normally your party members would not talk back to them. There's a few exceptions. I remember in Dragon Quest VIII, if you visit the village of Alexandria, which is Jessica's home, Lady Jessica would sometimes talk to some of the people if you have her on screen as your map character, sometimes even if she's in the background. And I believe that also happens to Angelo in Simpleton. There's a little small town outside of the Mayella Abbey where you talk to people in there. That's where Angelo frequents, and there's a few exceptions in Dragon Quest VIII. That's the first one that comes to mind. That's not this one, but this one really does change the whole NPC dynamic to me. It makes the world feel far more lived in. When you go into various towns, you can talk to the NPCs, and your party members will talk back to them. And you could talk to these characters multiple times and carry on a full-blown conversation between you, your party members. Sometimes your party members would bicker to each other while you're talking to the NPC. They feel like full-blown conversations that you're having with all of these characters. It makes you want to explore all of these towns and talk to all of these people, because you get to experience things that you normally often would not get. And in Grandia 1... man, I never felt the desire to talk to all of the NPCs in every town more than I did in this game. The only other exception would probably have to be Dragon Quest VIII. Because both this Grandia series and Dragon Quest VIII did a very similar thing, where in Dragon Quest VIII you could talk to everybody in, say, Firebury, the very first town. You could talk to everybody there, and then after about 3 or 4 story segments, you could backtrack to Firebury, and all of the NPCs would have new things to say to you. But your party members wouldn't talk back to the NPCs. That's the difference. In Grandia, you could talk to, let's say, some random character standing by a bridge, and this guy suddenly has a big story to tell you, and your characters are talking back, you're exchanging in banter, and then let's say after a couple story beats, story missions, if this town is still open to you at this point in the story, after about 2 or 3 dungeons, you can go back to this town, and the guy by the bridge probably has something new to say to you, and your characters have new things to say to him. It's like everybody's got their own story, everybody's living in this world, everybody's got their own things that they're doing, while you're off doing your own thing, which really provides me an interest in this world and its people. There is a very big emphasis on adventure. The main theme of Grandia has this big, adventurous, boisterous theme that is very orchestralized. There's a live orchestra version of this song, of the Grandia theme song, on YouTube. You can go look it up if you want. It's very good. It gives. I haven't felt such a feeling of adventure in a theme, like a video game theme, since Dragon Quest. I keep bringing Dragon Quest up, but the theme song to Dragon Quest with the horns and all that adventurous, boisterous music blasting you right in the face, it makes you want to go off on an adventure with these characters. That is exactly what Grandia gives to you, but it also gives you a sensation, a feeling of wonderment, a feeling of exploration. Because a big theme of Grandia is finding things that has come before, which is a big focus of many RPGs. You're often exploring ruins and past civilizations and learning about past civilization. There's a big archaeological feel to a lot of these RPGs now that I think about it. But it's no more emphasized more than in Grandia 3, because the big focus is the old world and things that have happened before, because some problems that have been happening back in the day are happening now that you have to deal with. And you have to have the old and the new come together to fix the problems for good, so as to say. The party system is about 4 characters max. You do not get to swap out your party members like in many other RPGs, like, say, Final Fantasy and things like that. No, you have an on-rails party system, much like the 4th Final Fantasy, the original version, not the remasters or the remakes. No, the original Final Fantasy IV had a very on-rails party system, where you'd say you're playing as Cecil, and you're going around, and then Kain shows up, and then Radia shows up, then Radia goes away, and then Rosa shows up, but then Kain goes away, and then you get Palamaporum, and then Cid comes in, then Rosa goes away. You know, everybody swaps out in Final Fantasy IV, and that's a lot how Grandia goes. You should play as the main hero, Justin. He goes around, then he picks up some other party member, then they pick up a 3rd party member, then the 2nd party member leaves, and then you get a 4th party member, then you get a 3rd party member, then that 4th party member leaves, and then that one comes back, then this one goes away, then you get another one, and that's very much how Grandia works. It's on rails. And if you want to collect everything, you have to explore that dungeon your very first time, but you're probably not going to be able to go back to it. There's a lots of treasure chests, there's a bunch of weapons and armor stored about and various things, so you got to go find those if you want those. The magic system is very interesting in that you get rewarded for using it. Much like how in Final Fantasy II, your magic abilities would go up the more you use it. That's very much how Grandia works as well. You have to use the abilities that you have to level them up. So I believe there's 4 main elements: fire, earth, air, and water. Water is very much healing spell focused, but there's some offensive spells. Earth is very much buff focused, like using like a defensive spell or using earth-based elemental attacks. Fire is very much the offensive thing, and then air is another offensive thing. And the more you use those abilities, like say the 4 original spells would be Howl, Burn, Diggin', and heal. So Diggin is an earth-based spell. It boosts your party's defenses. The more you use that, you would get experience points towards your earth elemental acuity. And the more you use Diggin, the higher the level becomes. And the higher the level becomes, you will learn new spells. The same for Heal, which is the water-based spell, the introductory water-based spell. The more you use Heal, the better healing spells you get, the higher your water magic level is, and vice versa for the other two. And you can combine these. Let's say your fire level, because you're using burn a lot, goes up to, say, level 20. And your earth ability goes up to, say, level 20 as well. Suddenly, you get some destruction-based spells like Boom or Kaboom and things like that, explosion-based abilities, which combine both elements to a single element. Or maybe you're leveling up your fire acuity and your wind affinity, and then suddenly you have electrical abilities that you're unlocking to use electric attacks, and the more you use electric attacks, it levels up both of these elemental affinities. So it's very, very rewarding to use magic in this game, that in a way that I haven't felt since, honestly, I can't really remember. Most of the time you just have a magic points bar, and the more you use spells, it drops down. You do have a magic points bar here too. You have like 3 tiers of spells: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, which is very interesting, meaning that you can use tier 3 spells without worrying about lowering the magical points you have in tier 2 and tier 1. So say your tier 3 spells are your strongest offensive magics. You can use those a couple times, but not a lot, because your tier 3 points are very low. But you can use those without worrying about your tier 1 magical points. Let's say you have a healing spell in tier 1 that you tend to use outside of battle to heal your party members, and you have a very high tier 3 spell that you use in battle to take out a big group of difficult enemies. You could do that. You can wipe out your entire tier 3 magical points storage, but you still have these two to work with. And I liked that they segmented the spells off, because it's, say, like Final Fantasy. In Final Fantasy, you just have the magic points bar. So say you used Flare or Ultima, big high magical cost abilities that do really high damage, but they have really high costs. Suddenly you find yourself low on magic because you're using too much destruction-based abilities that you don't have enough left to heal with. That is where Grandia solves it, where you could keep it confined to tiers 2 and 3 for your offensive abilities, and a lot of tier 1 abilities are your buffs, which is really cool. I really liked that. That was really interesting how they compartmentalized the magic system. Another very interesting thing that they have here is that your characters are technically free roaming. The AI does pathfinding. So you have a little small area. Your characters are running around as their whim. You don't get to control them, so as to say, but they run to different sides of the battle depending upon how they feel, I guess. But the enemies are also doing this. They're moving about as their turn comes on. And so, let's say the enemy is pathfinding from here to here, and you're standing right here, and you decide to attack. So as he's running here, if he's continuing there, you might attack and miss him because he's running right past you. So you gotta keep an eye out on that. There's some items that you can equip called warp abilities, where you can just teleport to the enemy and attack them, but every time you use an attack, they're running towards the enemy to get you. It's really interesting. It is very, very interesting combat that, for a PlayStation 1 game, I just hadn't seen before. The story is nothing to write home about. I have played plenty of very big stories before, plenty of over half the Final Fantasy games are better story than this. Over half the Dragon Quest games are better story than this. And quite a few of the Tales of games and the Isekai games, they're a little bit better than this. But what elevates Grandia over many of those games is the desire to continue. The desire to keep looking through the world, keep talking to the NPCs to hear what they have to say, and to hear what your characters have to say to those NPCs. It makes you feel like you're getting to know all of these NPCs throughout the towns. You care for them, so when the enemy attacks the town, you're going like, wow, oh my gosh, are all of the characters still alive? So you go looking for the NPCs, and some of them are gone. And character death in that regards really hits you, because you actually got to know know many of these characters, and now they're gone, which really hurts and motivates you to beat the final boss, to get revenge for all of this loss, this pain, because you got to know these characters over the course of the game, which is very, very rewarding to finish the game, so to say. I don't want to spoil too much here, but it was an adventure first before it was a story, if that makes sense. And while there are plenty of other games that emphasize that, like, say, The Legend of Zelda is pretty much an adventure first and a story near the bottom. You don't really have too much lengthy cutscenes and things like that. Grandia has cutscenes. Grandia has plenty of lengthy cutscenes. You will get to know your characters. Your characters will have dynamic to each other. They will talk to each other in cutscenes 5 to 10 minutes long sometimes. And you will get to know them, particularly the main two characters of Justin and the hero and heroine, Fina. Those two are the two main characters. You're going to be using them for the bulk of the game. And honestly, I came to care about these guys in ways that I didn't expect. There was an innocence about this, of how you have a sheltered character who has grown up wanting to explore the wide world, and then you have an experienced character who has explored the wild world but is a little bit jaded and has no desire to do it anymore. So when you have these two opposites, one who has gone places but doesn't feel like going anywhere anymore, and one who hasn't gone anywhere but feels like going everywhere, these two people meet and motivate each other. One, the experienced person, teaches the other person about the world, but the inexperienced person teaches the experienced person to get back into the world. And it's very interesting, honestly, to me at least. And I would say that Grandia is worth your time.